So good morning. My name is Albert Garcia. I'm the chairman of the Wynwood Bid Board of Directors. Welcome to our Wynwood Bid Board meeting. Today is July 8th, 2020. Before we begin, we have to read various statements into the record, and then we will get started with our agenda. Pursuant to Executive Order number 2139, issued by the Office of the Governor, Ron DeSantis, on June 3rd, 2020, local governmental bodies may conduct meetings without having a quorum of its members present physically or at any specific location, and utilizing communications media technology such as telephonic or video conferencing as provided by Section 120.54, subsection 5, subsection B2 of the Florida statutes. Procedures for the public comment will be explained by the city attorney shortly. The members of the Wynwood Business Improvement District Board appearing remotely for this meeting are David Charette, Gabrielle Braha-Isaac, Glenn Organ, Dr. Irving Lerner, and Marlo Courtney. Also appearing remotely are Manny Gonzalez, Bid Executive Director, and Daniel Diaz, City Attorney. Mr. City Attorney, please state the procedures to be followed during this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Any person who is a lobbyist pursuant to Chapter 2, Article 6 of the City Code must register with the City Clerk and comply with related city requirements for lobbyists before appearing before the bid. A person may not lobby a city official, board member, or staff member until registering. A copy of the code section about lobbyists is available in the City Clerk's office or online at www.municode.com. In accordance with Section 2-888, written notice for this virtual meeting was provided to the City Clerk at least 7 days prior to this virtual meeting. Since this is a virtual meeting as authorized by the Governor of the State of Florida, members of the public wishing to address the body may do so by visiting wynwoodmiami.com/virtual meeting to submit their written comments via the online comment form. Members of the public may also call 786-610-4830 to provide comments via the dedicated Wynwood Bid public comment voicemail. All comments submitted will be included as part of the public record for this virtual meeting and will be considered by the bid prior to taking any action. The bid will accommodate any speakers desiring to appear in person, subject to all applicable emergency measures in place to prevent the further spread of COVID-19. Members who appear in person will be subject to screening for symptoms of COVID-19. Any persons exhibiting any symptoms of COVID-19 will not be permitted to enter the bid office. All interested parties are required to abide by all state, county, and local emergency orders and are urged to remain at home and practice social distancing. If the proposition is being continued or rescheduled, the opportunity to be heard may be at such later date before the bid takes action on such proposition. When addressing the bid, the members of the public must first state his or her name, his or her address, and what item will be spoken about. When the bid takes action or votes on any proposition before it, it shall do so by a roll call vote, which shall be recorded by the executive director and included in the record. Please silence all cell phones and other noise-making devices. Any persons with disabilities requiring assistance, auxiliary aids, and services for this meeting may notify the City Clerk and Bid Executive Director. Please note, Bid Board members have generally been briefed by Bid staff and or the City Attorney's Office on items on the agenda today. The Bid is using Zoom to hold its July 8th, 2020 virtual meeting. Zoom is a cloud platform for video and audio conferencing, collaboration, chat, and webinars across mobile devices, desktops, telephones, and room systems. In order to ensure that the public has the ability to view the meeting, the bid will broadcast the meeting, and the meeting can be viewed live on Miami TV, miamigov.com/TV, through the bid's Facebook page, facebook.com, Wynwood /Wynwood Miami, and on Comcast Channel 77 in the city of Miami. Broadcast will also have closed caption. Additionally, the bid has not selected a virtual platform that requires the public to purchase or download any additional software equipment to watch this meeting. Aside from the Zoom platform and the participants appearing remotely, the public will have no discernible difference in their ability to watch the meeting. The bid has developed several new methods of ensuring public comment for a virtual meeting. It has established 2 new options. The first new option allows the public to provide public comments via the dedicated bid public comment voicemail by calling 786-610-4830, where the individuals will be able to leave a 2-minute message that will be played during the virtual bid meeting. The second new option allows the public to submit comments via the bid's online comment form. The comments submitted through the comment form have been distributed to the board members and bid staff throughout the day so that the bid board members can consider the comments prior to taking any action. Additionally, the online comment form will remain open during the meeting to accept comments and distribute to the bid board members up until the chairman closes the public comment. For all of the aforementioned options, all of the comments received will be included in the public record of the meeting. For these two new options, the bid also created a simple set of instructions explaining how the public may submit their comments with either option. Those instructions were provided in the notice of the public and published online at wynwoodmiami.com/virtual meeting. Additionally, like any other bid meeting, the public may provide public comment at the bid's office. The bid set up a terminal in the event members of the public travel to the bid office to provide public comment. However, due to COVID-19, all speakers desiring to appear in person, as mentioned before, will be subject to all applicable emergency measures in place to prevent the further spread of COVID-19. Speakers who appear in person will be subject to screening for symptoms of COVID-19. Any persons exhibiting any symptoms of COVID-19 will not be permitted to enter the bid office, but will be able to participate through the remote options described above. These three public comment options established and provided for the virtual bid meeting comply with sections 286.0114 and section 120.54 Florida statutes. The bid is published in agenda, as well as included in the notice to the public pursuant to our city code and the items and topics that will be discussed at the virtual bid meeting. Additionally, the public has been given the opportunity to provide public comment during the meeting, the terminal at the bid office, and the public comment on the online public comment form, within reasonable proximity and time before the meeting and during via the public comment voicemail and online public comment form. Moreover, section 286.0114, subsection 4C of Florida statutes specifically authorizes the bid to, quote, prescribe procedures or forms for an individual to use in order to inform the board or commission of a desire to be heard, to indicate his or her support, opposition, or neutrality in a proposition, end of quote. The bid has its three public comment options, has provided three different procedures and forms to indicate, among other things, the public's support, opposition, or neutrality on the items and topics to be discussed at the virtual bid meeting. The bid provided information on how to submit its comments in the notice of the public on its dedicated webpage and via its social media channels. Mr. Chairman, are you comfortable with all the notice provisions set forth and these uniform rules and procedures we've established for this virtual meeting?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, City Attorney. All right, so we are going to get started with our agenda today for our board meeting. So as is customary for these meetings, we start off with the approval of the minutes of our previous board meeting. Board members, you should have received in your packets the draft minutes for the previous meeting on June the 12th. If you could please take a moment to review the minutes. And we're going to ask that everybody now on the board unmute themselves so that if there's any questions, we can certainly address them. And if there are none, then we would certainly welcome a motion to approve the minutes. Let me know if there's any comments or questions on those before we proceed any further.
And Chairman, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Gonzalez.
All right, just for the board and for those that are watching in the audience, just some follow-up items relating to these minutes. Basically, we had spoken about the delay in the North Miami drainage project that's scheduled now to finish in September. We also noted that our May 2020 lease was extended for 3 months in light of the COVID. So today within your packet, you will find our recommendation to find a better and a cheaper and more central location for our needs in the bid for the next fiscal year. There's also a reference to the restaurant recovery program. We'll have an update on that later today at this meeting. And there were no resolutions other than the approval of the minutes. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Manny. Board members, any comments, questions for the minutes before we entertain a motion to approve?
Albert, have you blocked my video?
No, your video should be working, but let's see what's going on with that. Are you able to start your camera?
Yeah, it says that, there you are. Okay.
There we are.
Okay, thanks.
Great to see you, David. Thanks for joining us there. So are there any comments on the minutes? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make the motion.
Marlowe's first, second on the motion.
Second.
Glenn is second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We have our minutes approved. Thank you, gentlemen. Moving on to our agenda, we have a pretty healthy list of topics today, but before we get started, we'd like to welcome a guest to our board meeting today. He is the Executive Vice President of Florida East Coast Industries, the parent company of Virgin Brightline Trains, amongst other subsidiaries, Jose Gonzalez, who will be joining us momentarily to provide us with an overview, not just of their company, but also, of course, on the pending matters regarding the pursuit of commuter rail for the Northeast Corridor here in Miami-Dade County. So before we welcome Jose to our virtual meeting, I'm going to ask Chris to pull up a full screen short video that provides a great overview of the Brightline Virgin Company and the history of Florida East Coast Industries.
Our story begins in 1885 when American industrialist Henry Flagler, already well known for establishing Standard Oil alongside John D. Rockefeller, set his sights south and moved to Florida to pursue interests in real estate development. He would quickly become the driving force behind the growth and development of what is now the nation's third largest and most visited state. Fast forward to 2007, when all of Flagler's businesses, now collectively known as Florida East Coast Industries, FECI, were purchased by Fortress Investment Group. Given the growing congestion on Florida's major highways, especially I-95, it didn't take long for the team to recognize the opportunity to leverage existing rail infrastructure to connect Florida's cities with passenger rail. In 2018, after 3 years of construction, we opened Brightline, the nation's first privately funded high-speed passenger rail system. Our first route travels between Miami and West Palm Beach with a stop in Fort Lauderdale. Passenger rail, a transportation modality largely neglected for the last century, was suddenly revitalized in America. Contemporary cultural trends have made this new travel option all the more compelling. Increased demand for productivity while mobile, decreased demand for single vehicle ownership, the emergence of ride-sharing to get people to and from train stations, and the general trend towards safer, more eco-friendly, and experiential travel. By the end of 2018, we were carrying 100,000 passengers a month and had already become a critical component of the transportation network in South Florida. Our next step is expanding our Florida system to Orlando, with additional extensions planned for Disney World and Tampa. Our model has already proven successful in other markets where routes are too far to drive but too short to fly, where capture rates of the travel market average 20% and profit margins 50%. The second facet of our business model is the development of transit-oriented real estate. With the increasing urbanization of the U.S., people are seeking transit-oriented developments where they can live, work, play, and have access to great transportation. Our first planned expansion outside of Florida is Southern California to Las Vegas, a market which, like Florida, is a huge and congested route with 90 million visitors, 15 million residents, and over 50 million trips per year. Here we'll cut travel time from nearly 3 hours to just 90 minutes, all for less than the cost of gas and parking. Brightline, which will soon be known as Virgin Trains USA, is positioned as the most comfortable, reliable, fastest, cheapest, productive, and safest way to get people between highly populated cities that have congested corridors. We're positioned to transform regions and create connectivity between cities that was previously thought impossible.
All right, so with that, we are very pleased to welcome Jose Gonzalez from Florida East Coast Industries. And I'm gonna ask Jose just to unmute himself so we can bring him on screen. And Jose, good morning. On behalf of the Wynwood Bid Board of Directors, welcome to your first bid board meeting. We're thrilled to have you join us, and of course, very much interested in hearing what you have to say today. And board members, just so you know, Jose is tight on time, so he'll be joining us for a few moments to kind of give us a brief overview. And if time permits, there will be some Q&A opportunities following Jose's remarks.
Yeah, good morning, Albert, Mr. Chair, and all the board members. I'm pleased to be here. I think this is the first time I come before your board, virtually or in person. I know that Wynwood has been a big supporter of our efforts on the rail side for many different reasons. And but we've been talking about commuter rail ever since we got Brightline going. We've had the conversation amp up, but commuter rail discussions have been on the radar for decades in this region. Many of you know the discussions that DOT and Tri-Rail have had regarding what they call the Coastal Link, the Southeast Corridor study. I mean, there's been several names and several iterations of it, but it's sort of come to the front line when we as a company and the owners of the corridor really stepped up and had a momentum to create a passenger rail system. Obviously, freight trains have been going in front of this area for quite some time, and that opportunity has always sort of missed our communities. And through the different repositioning of our company, as you saw in the video, we really leveraged the assets that we had, and again, as traffic got worse and worse, it made more sense to look at that vision. So part of what we as a company looked at was how do we integrate not only our intercity passenger rail service, because Brightline is not meant to be a commuter service. We sort of acted like that in our first phase from West Palm down to Miami with a stop in Fort Lauderdale, because people were finding that even that option was something they wanted to do. But we continue to have the discussions along with the county and the state about, can commuter rail become a reality? And I know in this particular area, the TPO had looked at even a temporary platform and some sort of a trial project to try to figure out a way of bringing in commuter rail. To that extent, we had even worked with Tri-Rail when we first built the Brightline system to have Tri-Rail be connected to downtown Miami. That was our we pushed for that venture. We actually built a platform along with Tri-Rail using TIF dollars and state funding at the Miami Central facility. So, but that really would also skip Wynwood. So the area was frustrated that, hey, here comes a train that would never stop in Wynwood or the design district. So the conversations kept evolving. And to make a long story short, last year, through the efforts of Commissioner Heyman, we took the first leap into talking about a first new stop that would be sort of a hybrid between Brightline and commuter, which was the Aventura station. And that was really the bridge that created that first conversation into, can there be a true commuter system in the FEC? And with that, we've been working on the Aventura station. And as we finished the conversation, got the approval from the county commission, or moved forward with it, Mayor Jimenez approached us and said, you know what, I want to leave the beginning of a legacy, which has been talked about for years, with bringing in true commuter into the corridor and figuring out a way of doing that. And so we started that conversation in January, and then we all know what happened in March, right? So we find ourselves in a virtual meeting because of COVID, and obviously all of our businesses have changed dramatically. Transportation was not immune to it. In fact, we were probably, for the fact that we had to reevaluate, what was going on immediately, and for the safety of the public, suspend service. But we never stopped planning, because I think that was one of the things we took advantage of is, okay, if we're going to now pause operations, let's reshift to expansion. So we've been working on our Orlando expansions. That is full speed ahead. We were under construction from West Palm to Orlando. Sorry. Actually, I had another call coming in at the same time. I apologize for that. But we also started talking about the opportunities that could happen with commuter. And with that, what we ended up doing was figuring out how do we create a system that is manageable enough as a first step, because commuter really talked about Miami to West Palm, and so that elephant became the toughest thing to take down, because of the fact that if we try to accomplish it in one swath, which is what a lot of these studies did, we can never fund it. So we said, let's just focus on the Miami-Dade segment, look at downtown Miami to Aventura as the system, and then the stops in between. And so the system we came up with in the proposal we talked to the county about is really looking, obviously you have Aventura as one bookend, you've got the Miami Central as the other bookend, And in between, you have Wynwood, you've got the Design District, you've got what we call the Upper East Side, Upper Towel, Miami Shores area. You have a North Miami stop, and then you have FIU campus, which is sort of North Miami Beach, North Miami, and then OT Aventura. So it really shrinks it down to a system that's manageable, and really looking at how we take all the studies that have done in the past and not just do another study, but actually make it a reality, make the plan something that's executable. And so we reached out to Albert and asked, well, obviously, is Wynwood interested? And the resounding answer was yes. Obviously, Wynwood has been wanting a train station. I was actually part of the panel for ULI when they did the competition for a Wynwood design station. So we were excited to see these things happen and the opportunities that are happening in Wynwood, where density and intensity can play a role in having the station be successful out there. We went to the county commission. So the county commission, we put a proposal out there because everything has to start with a proposal discussion, negotiation, and basically had a discussion that yes, there's interest. They just have to figure out the economics of it. Like everything else, economics are what it's going to be the driver of how the operations and the capital are going to, what is the system going to look like? And so depending on what the county wants to do as either a beginning system or their ultimate goal, and that really has to do with service offering. Is it hourly service, is it half hours, is it 20 minutes? All of those decisions drive the cost of the operations and what can the county afford, not just during these COVID times, but in the future, right? Because you can't just plan because everything's going to be COVID forever. It's planning what is going to happen in the future that we can actually talk about. Traffic will be back. People will be back to their offices. That's a reality. So we want to be able to plan for that eventual return to normalcy. And so that's where we are in this stage right now. We're actually with the county creating that service offering, creating that ability to put a plan together that they can understand the finances and then they can execute upon. We haven't made it complex because the more complex you make a plan, the tougher it is to execute. But like everything, we need our partners in the public and private sectors, and that's why the bid becomes an important component of that, because making sure the businesses that are going to be impacted by this area have an understanding of it, and then an opportunity, because this will be a public process to opine. We appreciate the fact of being here to have that so early on in the process. There is no design, there is no selected area. So people ask me, is this going to be at 26th Street? Is it going to be at 29th Street? There is no selected spot for it. We know that there's areas that just because of rail infrastructure, it has to be within a certain area. Wynwood, I think everybody knows the geographical limits of it, but we haven't selected a spot. So that's going to be part of that process. And this board is an important component of those decisions. To that extent, we want, the next step is we got to bring back a proposal at latest by August to the county commission. That's a directive they gave the mayor, negotiate with us, come back with a service offering, something where we can have a understanding of what the fiscal impact is going to be moving forward. And then if we agree on that, if the community and the county commissioners agree that this is still something they want to pursue, then we come back with what's called definitive agreements. And the goal is to really look at having this agreement sometime now by the end of the summer, really look at start designing it and have implementation as soon as 2022, which is, sounds like it's far away, but it isn't that far away. They're building a regional transit system. And the reason we can do it that quickly is, one, because most of the infrastructure is in the ground already. Brightline has built most of that rail infrastructure, and it's really platforms we're looking at. It's signaling, it's some additional rail improvements, but majority of the system is in the ground. And then the rest of it is working out the deal with the operators. We've been talking to Tri-Rail. This is not absent Tri-Rail, and making sure they're part of the discussion. So we've been trying to make sure we bring all the partners together, and that's an important part of it. And Tri-Rail is going to be part of that discussion and has had given input in this discussion. So sorry I spoke so fast, but I wanted to make sure. I know your time is very limited. Mr. Chair, and I wanted to make sure that I can answer as many questions. I know a lot of people have been watching this for such a long time, so I want to be able to give the opportunity to answer whatever questions they may have in their minds.
Thank you for that, Jose. I'm going to ask the board members just to please unmute yourselves so that we can participate in a brief discussion here alongside Jose. So like we normally do for these virtual meetings, if you have a question, just raise your hand so I could just identify you. And don't be shy. Jose is a friend. Is anybody, Irving, Dr. Lerner? And actually, could you just briefly introduce yourself and give a little bit of brief background so Jose can appreciate who you are as well before you ask your question?
Yeah, Irving Lerner. My family's been in the Wynwood area since the 1950s. My parents, business was there, and I'm fortunate enough to grown up there, inherited some real estate that was garbage, but now you know what it is now. So, it was part of this whole renaissance. It's very exciting, and this rail would be fantastic. I just want to know briefly, I just got to keep refreshing myself, the difference between Brightline and Tri-Rail and who owns them and how they're funded. You keep talking Tri-Rail. I'm just a little confused sometimes. So could you just quickly, briefly tell me the difference and who owns them and how they run?
Sure, Dr. Lerner. It's actually fairly easy. So FECI and Brightline are all one company. We're owned by Fortress. We're a private company. We don't have any public funding to establish the train service you see today. And Tri-Rail is owned by the state of Florida, and it's a collaboration between the tri-counties, between Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach. They each fund it, and predominantly all of their funding comes from the public sector. So they're your commuter service, right? They're your long haul commuter service. Brightline's business model is really the long intercity commuters, meaning tourists, business travelers that want to go from Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm, all the way up to Orlando, eventually to Tampa. So our goal is to longer commute. So when you look at train systems, they all kind of work together, and our goal is to really create a nexus joining Tri-Rail, Metro Rail, Metro Mover, giving the consumers that optionality. So a person that works in Wynwood but lives in Broward can actually then commute and stop in Wynwood, or vice versa, and they can actually get up and down the corridor. And if they want to go to Orlando, they would take the train in Wynwood and go down to Miami Central, transfer over to the Brightline system, and they'll take it all the way up to Orlando. So it gives the connectivity a seamless mesh for everybody. But we are a private company, just like your business. We don't rely on public funding for any of our operations. It's 100%. There's a business model behind it, and so what we're doing here is really a public-private partnership. When you talk about this commuter service, it's our corridor, and we're basically leasing it out to the public for them to operate their public system, which will have different fare structure, right? So our fare structure is set by our business needs, and it's competitive. We compete like an airline. They're basically, it's supply and demand, and then the commuter systems are set by the public. So whether it's their board or the county commission, they're going to be just like another transit agency, if you will.
Any other questions for Jose? Just raise your hand. I don't see any other hands up. So I'm just going to chime in for a moment. Certainly we've been talking about this topic for several years, as Jose noted, and for those of you that are perhaps tuning in for the first time, there's lots of information out there already on this particular initiative for Wynwood and for the larger Northeast corridor of Miami-Dade County. Clearly, having an active, robust commuter system is not just a means for transit, but it really is a economic development catalyst for the area. To Jose's point, this will really allow for seamless interconnectivity with existing transit options. There's lots of gaps on that network, as we know, between buses and Metro Rail, Metro Mover, and Tri-Rail. So to finally have an opportunity to interconnect all of these different antiquated systems and bring them over to the east where we are, I think is certainly a game changer that we can all appreciate. So, Jose, I know you mentioned on the timeline, so we're about halfway between those conversations with the county. What can the bid do? And I know we've been having conversations offline moving forward to really help ensure that we bring together the community at large to cross this finish line in a satisfactory manner.
Yeah, that's a great question, Mr. Chair. Just like in any other effort, the more the elected officials hear that businesses and residents are behind an effort, because again, this has been going on for so many decades, that you've got always a champion, and you've got Commissioner Bobo, you've got Commissioner Amin Higgins, and you've got Commissioner Sally Heyman, Rebecca Sosa, and Chair Edmondson, who represents your district, all supportive of this. They got to get their other colleagues to be supportive of it. And, everybody feels like, is it only because it's going to benefit a certain area? I think this is a type of project that has a countywide effect, right? The fact that you create this regional network of transportation is important. So the bid's role is really to give a voice to those businesses that you support, and let the elected officials know that this is important for them to support this. It's a long-term plan. It's not something that happens overnight. It's something that happens, because everybody's right now worried about, well, during COVID, should we be going after this? Well, there's going to be opportunities to get federal funding that if we position ourselves correctly, that's really what we can aspire to get during this time. And that's one of the reasons we were pushing, is because we know that the federal government's going to come out with funding to accelerate projects that are quote unquote shovel ready. And because of the fact that this corridor is so built out, we have an ability to qualify for some of those federal dollars. And so the role is really for your board to come together and say, this is something that's important to us because it's going to drive, like you said, the economic advancement of Wynwood and of the area, and it's going to create the connectivity that your businesses and residents want. And so that, again, voicing that to your elected officials and making sure that there's participation when we have public meetings or be upcoming county commission meetings. I know you participated in the first one. That's important for you guys to be having a seat at the table as this gets fully planned out, and to make sure that the interest is make sure there's a Wynwood station for 100%. That's how you stay involved, is staying connected, and having that voice is how you assure that the political process doesn't pass you guys by. And that's what would probably the ask of the board, is to make sure you stay engaged and vocal, to the point that there is a resounding support for the project as it moves forward.
Terrific. All right, Jose. Well, listen, we know you're very busy, and we certainly are your partners in this initiative. So thank you again for your time today, and also for all of the hard work and the vision behind all of this initiative and trying to bring this into fruition. We certainly are counting on you, and you have our full support. So we hope to see you in person soon. But in the meantime, thanks again for your time.
Thank you, everyone, and stay safe.
Thank you.
All right. So with that, we are going to move on our agenda to public comments. So Chris, before we begin with the audio and video portion, I'm going to ask Manny to confirm if there's anybody at the bid office who wants to be heard for public comments. We cannot hear Manny. Let's... All right, he's saying no, so his microphone was not on, but yeah, Manny, I'm assuming there's nobody there, right? Nope. Okay, very good. So nobody is in the office. We're now going to switch over to the various other forms that were spoken at the beginning of the meeting as far as public comment opportunities. And Chris, I'm going to ask you to walk us through any public comments we've received thus far.
Thanks, Albert. So we had one person pre-register for public comment through Zoom. Michael Badencourt, I see you on as a participant. If you give me a minute here, I'm going to allow you to talk. Just remember you have 2 minutes for your comments. Please be sure to address the board with your name as well as your address. Okay, Michael, you're able to talk. Make sure you unmute yourself. Hey, Michael, are you there and able to unmute yourself for your public comment?
Okay, so we'll move on from that. Are there any other public comments, Chris, that have been submitted in writing?
Yes, we have one written comment, which I will circulate to the board.
Very good. All right, if we are able to get the gentleman back on, we will certainly try to bring him in later in the agenda. Seeing that there's no other public comments that are before us, I'm going to close the portion of public comments on our agenda. We're going to move right over to the executive director report and over to Manny to carry it away.
Thank you, Chairman. Real quickly, just to give some just brief updates before we really get into the budget side and what's happening on that end. Since our last meeting, just so you know, we're working with the Miami Parking Authority. I'm going to go in a little off order, but just to give you a heads up, we're working with the Parking Authority on tow traps. This is an initiative that we began about 1.5 years ago with Alex going around the district. Basically, we feel that the consumer experience is ruined, especially if you're from out of town or a local, if you are towed in Wynwood, which happens astronomically a lot. So we've been working with the MPA. We just found another location on 25th Street across the street from KYU. And basically it was a new building that was built, a new curb out, but it had a fire hydrant. It didn't have any striping. So we went ahead and coordinated with that. The restaurants and the businesses across the street were very appreciative because they see it happening every day. Now, we continue on our end with the emergency management notification. We envision a lot more of these webinars and grants and loans to start coming from the federal government again. Once we receive, we'll continue to send through Chris and the marketing channels out to the district. Clean team staff. Right now, we currently have all staff members working 236 hours. For the public or those that are watching, we, the Wynwood Bid, are the only entity that cleans the district. If our cleaners or the bid was not here, no one would clean this area. So this is an initiative that we, take pride in, especially helping out the city. Hopefully at one point the city will help us out with this initiative, but till then, it falls on us and we do an amazing job. And hats off to the team and Alec that supervised that. In regards to the outdoor seating, this is one of the cool initiatives that the city of Miami released in May. By mid-June, we had applications that are going to go out to businesses throughout the city of Miami that have abutting parking, that while it's not blocking the views of the cars or obstructing traffic in any way, and it's a city road, would allow these restaurants to augment their seating. This initially came out during phase 1, which was the 50% indoor eating, and then we always figured there's no way you could pay the rent. Now here at the bid, we always knew that no one has an answer for how you eat without a mask or drink without a mask. So we always envisioned this outdoor initiative as the future. At least for the time being, we know that New York has 6,500 restaurants doing it. So we got ahead of this with the help of the city of Miami, Zeri, Public Works, the MPA, and we were fortunate enough to release the KYU sidewalk parking program. That was the first in the city of Miami. The second one was Zach the Baker. And just so the board members know and those watching, The Wynwood bid is the coordinator of the applications, so we try to submit them on behalf of the businesses. We collect their BTRs, alcohol licenses, we do the sketching, and we send it on over to the city. So this is something that, we try to give back to our district. More importantly, and you'll see it in the budget, we'll talk about it more, the cost for these barricades is being absorbed by the bid. So this is one of those initiatives, that if you don't have a bid right now, this is out of pocket, application wise, good luck. Fortunately here, Wynwood, Coconut Grove, DDA, we're all working together. So these folks, that are in need are getting help. So we just want to let you know that as of this morning, we had another 4 Wynwood restaurants reach out to me to help them apply. I guess it was in light of the Herald story that came out this morning. So we're going to continue doing this. After speaking with the chairman yesterday, we have requested a block of 100 water barriers or concrete, whichever we could source, because we envision a race to get these for all of the restaurants within Miami-Dade County or the city, if the county does decide to do this. Office lease. So within your packet, you'll see it in the budget side. As you may know, right now we're paying about $5,300 for rent. The initial idea for us to come over to North Miami Avenue was because North Miami needed the assistance. As you know, our first office, we were on 26th Street. That street has been blessed, with great development, great, uptick. There's life all over that. That's the new epicenter. And we came over to North Miami. We feel that our job was done after 2 years here. We were able to facilitate the crosswalks on North Miami, the drainage project, the French drain install that wasn't scheduled to be part of this project. We're going to have kiosks coming in the near future to help people get through. And we also had that light to assist the kids that are exiting the school on 24 and 25. So that's a win-win that we've done. Within your packet, what we're doing is we now feel that the next area within the district that needs it is the southeast quadrant. As you may know, we have the rescue mission there. We work with them. We work with the police. But, our idea is to try to get into that sector so we could help out that community, the homeless, on a daily basis, similar to what we've done here on North Miami. And I'll get into the granular on the totals when we get to that point. And the Wynwood wayfinding, you're also going to find that within your budget packet. This is one of the most interesting and I think needed initiatives in Wynwood, similar to when I was in Coconut Grove. I was responsible for about 143 pieces of wayfinding. This is something, and it's a 17 block district. So over here, this is something that's going to allow us to let people know where to park, where to go. They're going to know the boundaries, within the area that they're coming into Wynwood or coming into Overtown / Wynwood. We hope to do a partnership with Overtown when it comes to signage down on the 20th Street. But the idea is to work together with our community to be able to put events on these signs right now. Right now, what we have are temporary. So within your packet, you'll see a draft of, the samples of what it looks like. And what we're all basically trying to do is not recreate the wheel, but continue the uniformity that the Downtown Development Authority did with their signage. The closest one that we have right now is on Northeast 2nd and Northeast 20th Street that basically says Wynwood, and it tells you an arrow to make a left. So after speaking, the DDA was kind enough to send us the contacts. Albert and I and staff have been talking to the folks that are responsible for the installation and design, and we're going to work on piggybacking this agreement to hopefully spend funds this year for the paperwork side of it, to know the planning side, and then on next year's budget we asked for $50,000 to begin installation. So hopefully, if the board concurs when we talk about this during budget, this is an initiative that is literally going to get traction right away, install, which is what we need. Then another one that's happening is Just so you guys know, rideshare to Alec, our project coordinator, and myself, we're talking with the MPA and Uber and Lyft. We have a conference call tomorrow to continue discussing the ride shares and what we could do to prepare for when, you know, everything passes and we're back to, you know, a substantial normal. So all those initiatives we continue, and that's it for right now. If there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Oh, Manny, thank you for that update. Just if you could you give a little bit more information as to the location for the potential office moving forward? You mentioned
Yes, sir.
the background on the history, but I think you skipped over where we're headed, because we do have some images we can share as well with the board.
Okay, so within your packet, you'll see it was an initial quote that we got from East End Capital. This was one of the initial office location that we were thinking of when we were moving the first time around. It's the same space that we looked at 2 years ago. We are getting it at a better rate than what we asked for 2 years ago. Right now, the quote says 4,000, but after speaking to East End, they're willing to go 3,500 per month for the first year. Right now, it's at a 4,000. To give you an idea, we're paying 53 right now. So the space is central to where we need. It's next to the school. It's literally right across the street, you know, a couple blocks, you know, from North Miami Avenue. And this is where we feel that the district needs the next push. So I don't know if anybody wants to give any input on, you know, the space or anything, but, you know, the images are there. Our idea is to be in that space by August 1st. If we would be able to get an approval by the board, and, you know, if of the budget, we would work right away to start the agreement between the landlord and the bid in the city of Miami.
Thank you, Manny. We can discuss that as part of the budget conversation, but this is just information for everybody to know. And we did look at various other options as well, just to kind of further Manny's points. And just in the overall history of the office shifting through different quadrants, we firmly believe that the Southeast quadrant is an area that definitely needs a lot of help. There's also a growing homeless issue that we've discussed before here. So just having our resources anchored in that region, I think, can help mitigate some of these longer term concerns that we've been trying to work through with our partners across the city and county. So I'm going to open it up to any questions or comments from Manny regarding his report. Seeing none, we're going to move on the agenda, and we're going to bring in Commander Kerr from the Wynwood Net City of Miami Police Department to give us the security update. And Commander Kerr, if you can hear us, please feel free to unmute yourself.
I'm here.
Go for it. We hear you loud and clear.
Hey, how's everybody doing? I won't talk about crime numbers so much because the numbers are kind of skewed based upon the fact that nobody's really coming into the bid as much. So we're down about 60%, but it's not really a reflection of crime as much as, you know, volume of people. The issues we're dealing with are still the same, you know, some minor burglaries. We've had a few cars broken into, but we're talking, you know, 2 or 3 where a norm for a month was 100. So that's how dramatically different it is. We've worked about 35 days in a row now with the demonstrations. They are daily. I'd say the majority of them don't come through the bid. Probably about 50%, 40% come through. So I usually go with the demonstrators in case they roll through the bid. What's happened, we've had almost all peaceful demonstrations and various different versions of it, whether it's a march or whether it's a standalone conversation or a art piece. What I'm proud to say is that we've had no damage or arrests or any kind of violence of any sort within Wynwood when we've had these. So all the incidents where they've had an effect an arrest on the highway or effect an arrest on Biscayne or the deploying of gas. None of that stuff's happened here, and I attribute it to the officers really communicating with the demonstrators as they walk. It's a very sensitive topic. Obviously, it's difficult for the officers to deal with, and it's been a long time. So I'm proud of their abilities to work with the demonstrators when obviously that's who they're demonstrating against. That's tough. But the last thing I want is an incident where anybody gets hurt, whether it's a demonstrator getting hurt, a police officer getting hurt, a civilian getting hurt. And I don't want that to occur in Wynwood. So I don't want it to be the narrative of, look, the media comes out and says, look what happened. They blocked the street. The cops came out with shields and sticks. That's not really what we're about. So we're trying to work with them as much as possible. I communicate with Manny as much as I can when we do enter the Wynwood area to try to give businesses a heads up. In the beginning, we were very concerned. The crowds are large. Some days we had 2,000 people marching. Those crowds have gone down substantially. We average about 50 a day now, and it's the same organizers that we're in communication with. So at least I know their names now, and I have some method of communication with them. Some are better than others, but I try to communicate that as much as I can to Manny if we think it's going to impact anywhere in the bid. Let me talk about the homeless issue for a while. The chief of police has redirected our efforts towards homeless placement to the Office of Homeless and Veteran Affairs, which is the department within the city that specifically deals with homeless placement and outreach and help. What he wants the officers to focus on is the crime. So whether it's a drug or alcohol issue in the street, people fighting, that's what they want the officers to deal with, the homeless. They don't want us participating in the homeless outreach and placement, which has kind of been traditionally a dual role that we did with the net and with the homeless unit. He wants to focus it back towards that homeless unit to get policing away from some of these social outreach things that aren't necessarily law enforcement or crime fighting. So we don't deal with it as much as I would have liked, and what happens is it does make these problems get a little worse. And so we do have encampments forming up in south of us in Overtown, and there's some areas of Allapattah that are getting bad, and we're working on ways to deal with that within the city. This does not mean that if there's a homeless individual on a private property that's not, seeking shelter, it's a matter of somebody's trespassing or vandalizing or breaking something, that is still a police issue. So I don't want to deter anyone from letting us know what's happening. In fact, still, communicate with me as much as you can about the homeless issues, because if it's not a police issue, I'm going to forward it to those agencies that are supposed to handle it, and then I'm going to hold them accountable for handling it. And if it is a police issue, I want to make sure our officers are out there and dealing with it. So things like somebody breaking into the back of an abandoned building, things like that, please let us know about right away. We can go and address that. That's a crime. That's not a homeless related issue. That's not a social issue. That's somebody, breaking into your property. We want to deal with it. The construction on Miami Avenue, 24th Street, 23rd Street is difficult. We know we want to get that thing open as fast as we can. Miami Avenue is kind of a mess right now. We're out there every day trying to work with the independent contractors to keep the area safe. Some of the sidewalks are being closed, and we do have pedestrians walking around. We do have some tourists out there. It's difficult. We're working with them as much as we can, and we work with the Public Works Department and the Building Department to try to make it as easy as possible. Tonight, the county mayor has instituted the emergency ordinance so that there are no more inside dining of restaurants, and we have a 10 o'clock curfew. So these things are new. The mask mandate that is within the city of Miami is also new. The officers are equipped with masks. So our marching orders today is, when we engage out there with people without masks, we provide them with a mask and educate them on what it is. I don't believe we started issuing the civil citations yet, but that is an enforcement avenue that they're discussing. Certainly, we are aware of any businesses that are open or that are in violation of the emergency ordinance about social distancing, and you've seen the social media posts, and we try to mitigate that as much as possible. There is a task force that goes around and enforces that. I tell my officers to notify me of anything they see, and we forward it to them. And the majority of the time, we reach out directly to either the operator or the business owner, and no one has opposed us yet. No one's saying, "Hey, I'm not going to do that. I'm not fighting these issues." I don't think anyone really is a bad actor within the bid, and there hasn't been a situation where we've had to go in and start doing any kind of enforcement action outside of what the county did in the very, very beginning. I don't know if that's going to change this week. I know a lot of people are upset about it. I know there's a lot of politics behind it, so I try to depoliticize it with the officers as much as possible and let them just notify me, and then I handle it. Usually I can do it with phone calls. I don't have to go out there and take any enforcement action. But again, this is, it's a fluid situation. We're dealing with it on a week-by-week basis based upon whatever, new ordinance or COVID levels or whatever these standards they enforce. So I just ask everyone to remain patient with the officers, and if you see anything weird or if you have something that concerns you, please let us know. I do have most of the cops back, so 3 or 4 are still deployed in the bicycle response team, which is kind of the go-to unit that's enforcing the demonstrations. But I have a lot of my beat officers back. I hope you're still seeing them. They want to be seen. They want to engage with everyone out there, even though there's less people. I still have buses unloading in the morning, and there's definitely tourists out there. It's just in a weird, strange environment. Questions for anyone?
Thank you, Commander. We're going to ask Chris to pull up the board back on the screen. And if anybody has any questions or comments for the Commander, just raise your hand so we can call upon you. Marlo.
Yeah, Commander, just a question, and I know you're aware of the issue that's happening on the 2100 block of Northwest First Place. But I'm a bit confused now in terms of it's private property where this new encampment is actually growing, and of course then it bleeds out into the city right of way. So are you saying that is something enforceable, that can be addressed? And I mean, the situation out there is getting very, it's pretty awful. So I just would like to know, is there a way that the private property owner that is not properly securing this property to try to avoid this unfortunate circumstance? Are there any steps that can be taken to remedy the situation?
Right. The best way is what you guys typically do. Send me a photo of it, and I refer to the NROs. So the first level is the NRO, the neighborhood resource officer, reaching out to that business owner and saying, "Hey, we have an issue here." Because a lot of times, or the property owner, I don't mean the business owner, the property owner. A lot of times, the property owner may not even be aware of it. So we let them know. Almost always, the property owner will take steps to either secure and or remediate the stuff that is out there. Sometimes it becomes difficult if there is somebody actually living there and they're saying, "Hey, this is my stuff." Just because it's your stuff, that doesn't absolve you of, the fact that you're trespassing on somebody else's property and you set up a tent. So we try to be, in the abundance of humanity, we go out there and attempt to place them. So that's when I reach out to the Homeless and Veteran Affairs office to come out with the NRO or the police officer that's going to come out there and remove them. But the sooner you deal with the issue, the better, because as you know, once you start setting it up there, 1 tent becomes 2, becomes 10. And I'm not going to let it happen, which sometimes happens under I-95 or by now with 7th Avenue. It used to be First Avenue down there by Camilla's house. You don't want it to become a situation where it's impossible for us to go in there and mitigate. So I know the person that's sleeping in that area over there. He's one of our regulars. He's been in Wynwood for 25 years. He'll probably be in here for 25 years after we're all gone. He refuses placement in shelter, and there's obviously substance abuse and mental illness issues that probably prevent him from taking those things. But we're going to go over there and remove that stuff. So private property, it's the obligation, obviously, of the property owner to clean. We are here to help. So if there's a situation where you feel that is unsafe and you'd like an officer to be present when that occurs, we can help. And usually we'll bring in then the social services. If it bleeds out into a sidewalk or a public right-of-way, that's purely police. You can't actually remove stuff that's on a sidewalk. in front, and that's where we would come in and try to open that up. But the sooner you tell us, usually the better. If you tell me and it doesn't get fixed in a day or two, tell me again and I'll light those fires, because sometimes it's an agency outside of police that I need to kind of fire up. And the best way for me to get any kind of action is, citizen complaints or business owner complaints saying, hey, I have an issue here. I'm telling you guys, please let me know. They have to have some kind of accountability for what they did based upon those complaints.
Gabrielle, did you have your hand up? Do we just need to ask you to just unmute yourself if you can, so we can hear you? Yep.
Is it yeah. Now I was saying that I sent an email for the same problem like last week, and on our property as well, on 300 Northwest 29th Street, I received some complaints from our neighbors that the number of people that are like living there is growing as well. Now it's 2 people. It used to be 1 and now it's 2. And they're living just outside. I feel bad for them, but maybe there is a better place for them to stay.
The NROs went there yesterday, and the NSWs, which is the neighborhood service workers from Wynwood, removed what they consider to be the garbage. Remember, we have to be sensitive as to what is garbage or trash or what is personal belongings or someone's personal effects. So I do have a tremendous amount of empathy for them also. I was a cop in Miami in the late 90s, early 2000s, when we dealt with homelessness in a way that got us, under the Pottinger. That person there too is another longtime Wynwood resident that was in Wynwood as long as Dr. Irving was, probably. He's been here forever. It's a substance abuse and mental illness issue also with that one person, so we have to deal with it in those ways. The officers are aware of them, but it still does beget, crime issues. So like you said, one will come there, and then it becomes 2, and then it becomes 7. My biggest concern really is for that southeast corridor. We've had correspondence from the attorneys of some of the new buildings that are coming in, basically putting the city on notice of a health issue in that area. I agree with them. I support their whether it's a legal motivation to help clear that area out, but we have got to address the issue in the southeast portion of the bid. Particularly not, it's I don't want a small time fix. Having sanitation coming in and picking up the mattresses is one thing, but that is not a long-term solution for that area, which is in the next probably 9 months to 18 months is going to explode with development. There's Miami Avenue is opening up. You have new construction that's going to come to completion, and some that are still breaking. It's definitely an issue that has to be dealt with citywide, but without that, like you say, those emails with the pictures of the stuff is the best way to get, to handle it. In fact, if you go to 300 29th Street, that area should be clean, because as of yesterday, it wasn't. That doesn't mean they didn't move back in last night, but I know the officers went out there and cleared out that area yesterday.
Okay. Seeing no other hands up for questions for our commander, I just want to thank you and the entire department for all of your service to the community. As always, thank you, Commander Kerr. Next, we're going to move over to our projects coordinator, Alexander Sanchez, who's going to give us a brief overview of what he's been working on the last couple of weeks.
All right, I'm going to keep it brief and, sorry to beat a dead horse with a stick right now, but most of what I'm going to say is going to be dealing with homelessness in the area. So there has been a recent uptake on the southeast quadrant, as mentioned earlier. And the bid has actually created a report of known homeless encampments as on June 30th. And we've been documenting the situation, how it's been progressing, and sending a report over to the Net Office, and subsequently the Department of Veteran Affairs, and we've been requesting assistance. So the bid has been sending these photos, sending out, putting pressure on the city and the Department of Veteran Affairs to kind of help us address this, because it has turned into more of a problem than usual, and it needs to be addressed. And then we have sanitation duties continue on as normal. On the next slide, you'll probably see before and after of Northwest 27th Street after July 4th. It was a mess, but we had our clean team out there and they readily addressed the matter. The clean team has been doing a very good job and making sure that the streets and the public right-of-way is in Wynwood is very clean. So thank you for their hard work. And that's about it. Short and sweet.
Thank you, Alexander. I greatly appreciate it. Next, we're going to move on to Chris Hoffman for the marketing coordinator update. Oh, actually, before I do that, I see a hands up from Marlo. So pardon me. Marlo, did you have a question for Alexander?
I do. Alex, is there a way, and I guess, I was kind of alluding to it a bit when talking to, to the commander, but in some cases, is there a way to pressure the property owners that are not properly securing their own private property in order to dissuade people from walking through fences and setting up these type of situations of encampments? I mean, some of it is, again, I'm just trying to, look at if there's any low-hanging fruit here that we can that we can address to pressure the property owners that might not be taking good enough care of their property, and then these situations occur. So
Right.
Can the bid do that? Send letters, send photographs to the property owner so they are aware. It's back to, sometimes, in the past where this has happened on this specific property, the tree needed to be cut. Then the tree gets cut, then the fence gets broken, then it's just one thing after the other. So I'm not certain if we're applying enough pressure to some of the private property owners that need to be shown, and it needs to be displayed to them that they need to address the issue.
Yes, and I'm well aware of the property you mentioned earlier, and I believe that the problem largely lies with the fence being set back from the property line, given this kind of area that's more likely to have a sort of homeless encampment. So I'm going to be looking into probably talking with the city, because I believe when they initially were planning to put up the fence, they wanted to put it at the property line to kind of prevent this issue from occurring. But for whatever reason, they mandated that they would have this setback, and I'm obviously we're going to use all the evidence we've gathered, all the photos and the current situation to maybe argue with the city to possibly amend that setback to actually push it more closer towards the property line, and hopefully that'll help mitigate the issue. I will keep you updated on that.
And I believe Manny has a comment. Manny, go ahead and unmute yourself. I think Manny's having some technical difficulties there, but we will certainly follow up with.
All right, I got it. Sorry about that. My screen is twitching. I can't even find the mouse. All right, so Alec, I got a recommendation.
Yes.
Can you map out the locations? We could start with this one that we know about setback wise, and let's make life a little easier for the commander. And what we could do is we could go to fast signs or the sign place by the Orange Bowl, and let's make contact with the property owners so we could create for them the no trespassing signs. and then we'll put their number on the sign. So when the police or a homeless agency comes by, they already have the authorization to move someone from their private property with the no trespassing sign. And in the case that they need to make that call, they just call that number that's on the sign. It's a police sign just made for trespassing. And I think if we send the pictures to the affected owners and we tell them, give us a name and a contact and we'll take it from here, I think that'll get a head start on this as well.
Yeah. And I want to add that the property owner for that lot has actually, in the past at least, they've been active in kind of addressing the kind of buildup on those encampments. But recently it's kind of stopped. So that's why we're currently in the situation that we're in right now. But yes, I agree with you, and I'll work with the property owner to get those no trespassing signs put up.
All right. Thank you, Alexander. And with that, we're going to move further along our agenda to the marketing PR update. And with that, we're going to go over to Chris for the marketing coordinator report.
Thanks, Albert. The past couple of weeks since the last board meeting, as everyone can imagine, has really been focused still on COVID updates and memos. Since it started, we're now, I think, close to 25 memos that have gone out with the change in policy, whether it's from city or county. So we're ensuring that we make sure we push it out as soon as we can, whether that's 9 p.m. or 6 a.m. They're going out as soon as we get the information to make sure that all of our businesses, property owners, and in reality, everyone in our email database is up to date with the latest information. We want to make sure everyone is staying safe and able to obviously operate their businesses to the extent that they can. As we talked about last month, we moved social media in-house this past month. So this was the first month where myself and Alec were collaborating to put the calendar together. So for the month of June, there was our total audience is now over 193,000 between the 3 platforms. So it is steadily growing each month. With month of June posts receiving more than 20,000 engagements across them. If anyone knows, maybe a little bit lower than other months, we've had to pause due to certain events, but that posting schedule is starting to ramp back up. And with that being said, month of July and the new closing that goes into effect, I believe tonight, a lot more of the F&B posts will be focused on who's still open for takeout and delivery, as well as now the outdoor seating that's coming into play, whether it be through the bid or the pre-existing patio conditions at these different restaurants. We're also going to start looking into more of an additional ad spend to make sure that these businesses that are open, we're able to broadcast at least to the local audience to ensure that anyone that feels safe to come out and visit a retail store is able to do so. They know who is open, or if they still want to just stay home, not have to cook and order from one of our F&B restaurants. We just want to make sure that we're getting the word out there as much as we can. So then one of the other things that we did over the past couple of weeks is we sent out a survey to our general membership, just kind of a health check on to see how the bid's doing in a couple of key areas. So it ran from June 25th to July 6th. And one of the questions we asked were the satisfaction of the sanitation levels within the district, within the street and the sidewalk. We had overwhelming response of people that were happy with it. There was only about 18 that answered as they were very dissatisfied or dissatisfied with the current conditions. We attribute kind of a lot of that, especially coming from the open-ended comments. There was a lot of talk on homelessness, on the increase as we've kind of gone through. So we think that uptick has generally led to people's maybe more dissatisfaction with the streets more than on a normal basis. One of the other questions we asked, we provided a simple statement saying Wynwood feels safer than it did a year ago. There was only 14% that either said strongly disagree or disagree. Same thing kind of with this question. We were anticipating if this was sent out in February, numbers may have been even a little bit more favorable before the pandemic hit, things like that. We know people are not overly cautious, but a little bit more than they probably would be normally. So we would have loved to send out in February and have a benchmark to do that. but it will be interesting to see moving forward once things kind of settle down a bit to see if that changes at all. Next question we kind of had here was asking about the communications from the bid. Thankfully, 89% were either very satisfied or satisfied with the communications coming out. There are a couple open comments that were regarding the COVID memos that have gone out. I know a lot of those have been a very big team effort between myself, Albert, city and county administrators to be able to get that information. So we're glad to see that, the work that we're putting into those memos is appreciated and that it's still helpful. So we will obviously continue to do those. And the last question we added with the uptick of, I guess, concern of the security camera network, which I know we'll talk more in depth about later. We also added a question asking the businesses, hey, this is how many cameras we have in the district as is. Would you be in favor of adding the additional ones that we've been talking about? So 87% of them agreed with, it was a yes or no question, with adding additional cameras to the network. Seems like everyone does see the value with those CCTV cameras that were installed. And then some of these open-ended topics that I kind of mentioned, it was basically just, hey, let us know any other thoughts, comments, concerns. Homelessness came up quite a few times. As usual, when we do one of these surveys, the impact fees are always brought up with the rate that they're going right now. And then crosswalks kind of came up a couple times with the lack thereof in the neighborhood and how we can address those issues. That's it.
Thank you very much, Chris. We're going to move over to Kelly Penton over from Kivett, who's going to be joining us on screen momentarily to provide us with an update on all of the phenomenal work that they've been doing on the PR front. So Kelly, just going to ask you to unmute yourself so that we can hear you and walk us through some of your various initiatives.
Sure thing. Thanks so much, Albert. So really dovetailing on Chris's report, our work has focused primarily on supporting the bid through this COVID-19 crisis. And our goals have been twofold. One is really supporting the businesses in the area and doing everything we can to promote them through this difficult time, and also to underscore all the amazing work that the bid has been doing along those same lines to help businesses, to help the area, and how that role really is even more integral today with the situation that we have. So along those lines, this last month, what we really focused on was leveraging the reopening of restaurants. I know we're in a different place right now, but we did jump on that to do a proactive media outreach around restaurants reopening in Wynwood, and efforts of the bid to support them. And so we were able to start generating media attention surrounding the outdoor seating initiative that we're seeing come to fruition now. We were able to generate a standalone story in the Miami New Times about Wynwood, having this proactive effort to create seating on parking spots. We also worked on a CW story about Wynwood reopening, again tied to the restaurant openings, and similarly we're able to generate some coverage in Miami.com. Another initiative that we worked on over the last month is supporting the bid's advocacy efforts to bring commuter rail to the area. So we worked to elevate the bid's position that there should be a station that serves the Wynwood area. We worked with Albert to develop a letter to the editor that was published in the Miami Herald. And we also reached out to all the media covering that item that was before commissioners during that month, ensuring that one of our stakeholders from Wynwood that was a speaker at that meeting was actually quoted in a Miami Herald story as well. So those were really our main initiatives for the last month. We are, as we speak, working on doing proactive promotion again surrounding outdoor dining in Wynwood. We were able to have Wynwood be highlighted and the bid's efforts highlighted in a story that was just published in the Miami Herald. You know, Manny just mentioned it earlier. I was happy to hear that other restaurants saw that and reached out to express interest in participating in, the whole conversion of parking spaces to dining areas. So we are continuing to promote that as we speak today, and we'll be doing so throughout the coming days to make sure Wynwood is front and center. And again, that folks think of Wynwood restaurants for outdoor seating opportunities. And, we'll be supporting also on delivery and takeout options and anything we can do to promote that for the area. So that's really it. Those are our main initiatives that we've been working on and that we'll be working on looking forward to the coming days and weeks.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm going to ask Chris to bring us back on screen. Any questions or comments for either Chris or Kelly? If you want to just raise your hand, we'll call upon you. Seeing none, I just want to thank Chris and Kelly and the entire team, Manny and Alexander as well, for all of their efforts. I mean, obviously, pretty much everything now that we are working on is in some way, shape, or form focused on assisting our businesses weather this COVID storm. So I want to thank everybody for their collective team effort. It really has been a phenomenal attempt by the bid to play an even larger role than we have previously played, which I thought was already a phenomenal role to begin with. But folks are working literally weekends, nights, early mornings on this. So I just want to make sure I acknowledge that. We also have Taylor and Riza from Kivit that are also part of the greater team as well. With that, we're going to move over to the next item on our agenda, which is finance and the security camera network. So as we touched upon briefly at the last board meeting, last year, if you remember, back on July 17th of good old 2019, when we reviewed our budget at that time for the upcoming fiscal year, we allocated dollars for the expansion of our CCTV security network. That item was approved by this board. And unfortunately, it did take several months between legal and the police department to get those dollars reallocated and before the Miami Commission in order for them to formally receive that donation and bring those dollars over to the police department to get those cameras purchased and installed. As we heard at the last meeting, there was some public outreach, particularly public comments before the commission and the board that spoke to some concerns regarding that. I think we've mitigated and addressed most, if not all of them. And certainly within the community, as Chris alluded to during his report, we did reach out to various property owners beyond the survey. I know I had numerous conversations with merchants and property owners, and from what I understand, others here as well have done so. So the overwhelming feedback that we've received is that this is very much something that we want to continue doing. So I want to open it up to discussion from the board. If there's any concerns or reservations that you may have before we take a motion just to underscore our continued support for the program. I'm going to ask you to open up your mics because we are going to be taking a vote. Does anybody have anything that they want to add? I see a few hands going up. I'm going to ask Chris to pull up the slide in a minute summarizing the network. But before we do that, we're going to go over to recognize David Charette, who I know couldn't join us at the last meeting, but certainly is here today. So David, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did actually listen to the meeting when I was in the airport on Facebook. I wasn't sure the last meeting, so I wasn't able to listen to it's in entirety, but I did hear a good chunk of it. And I think the one thing to keep in mind is the empathy required from this board when considering the comments that people are giving. And one of the things that I had not mentioned while I am in favor of the cameras, it specifically for me was that idea I've gone back to again and again, which was the safety of the people in Wynwood, the pedestrian. And what motivated me to make the decision to fund the cameras where we had a homeless person that was hit and killed. And I thought that was a extreme tragedy. And also the idea of Cameras, I know we live with science fiction and contemporary 20th and 21st century writing in fiction, is that this idea of Big Brother, and it can be in fact something that's not a good element. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that having these cameras would also see many different people functioning, both the city, the fire department, the police department, ambulances, residents, pedestrians, and that could help the case of injustice, whether or not it's a pedestrian being hit and killed, or the idea of somebody specifically who's had their rights infringed upon. So I can greatly empathize with people being upset with the idea of thinking that somehow this is just more surveillance and the money's going the wrong direction. But in fact, to me, it's really geared towards protecting people. And while I understand some of the comments, I am a proponent for the cameras.
Thank you, David. I'm going to ask every board member to chime in on this topic, only because it is going back to commission tomorrow, and I want to reassure them that we are fully committed to the program. So not to single anybody out, but Marlo, you happen to be within my line of sight here on the monitor. So is there anything you'd like to add?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I agree with David's comments. I have visited, as I said at the last meeting, I have visited the headquarters and seen this system, in its process. And this is more, to me, the way I see this is more as a tool for investigating crime. This is not, it doesn't concern me as much as, as some people were that concerned about Big Brother, issues. I mean, I look at this as something that solves a crime, more or less, following when a crime has taken place. So this is a tool that is for the investigators, and it has been successful. And I am in support of this funding for the additional cameras.
Thank you, Marlo. I'm going to ask Glenn to unmute himself. Thank you.
I'm a proponent. I'm echoing comments I made at the last meeting. I think I made it clear that it holds everyone accountable, whether it's the people, anyone committing the crime, or any officer that's wearing a camera, or anyone that's living in the area. It's, to me, it's a must. It's necessary, and yeah, I vote for it.
Thank you, Glenn. Irving, if you could please share your thoughts on the network.
Well, yeah, I don't think this, it's not a real time. We're not infringing on anybody's rights. We're not watching them. It's really for solving crime. I agree with Marlo. And the commander said crime was down 40% since we installed the first wave of cameras. So, to me, it's common sense. This is for safety. And so to me, it's a no-brainer. And we're not infringing anybody's rights. And again, this is a limited use for our money. We are doing housing, public housing. We will be doing good things for the community with our money. And so I'm all for it.
Okay, very good. All right, so, while this allocation again was done a year ago, technically no further action is required. But because the City Commission did ask us to go back and speak to our membership, which we've done, and to discuss this item, which we have previously and again today, just to kind of really button the topic up, I'd like to ask for everybody just to take a quick roll call vote. So I'm going to ask everybody to unmute themselves so that we can get this vote on the record, so we can hear you. So please, everybody, unmute yourselves. If you can't, we will remotely try to do that. I don't know why we keep on having issues with the mute today, but we'll be sure to work on that for the next meeting. So I'm going to start with a roll call vote. It'll be a yes or no vote. I'll start as the chairman. In favor of this continued program, I vote yes. So yes or no vote. Marla?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Very good. And that covers all of the board members we have present at the moment. So with that, we're going to move over to the next item, which is our draft budget for the next fiscal year. And we're going to ask Manny to walk us through that. While he gets set up, I'd ask you to pull up your packets because we are going to be referencing a few line items. Any questions you may have, obviously, I'm going to ask you to hold them to the end. And Manny, if you could just kind of walk us through the overview, because I know most board members have had a debrief opportunity to go through this point by point.
So just to give some insight into the budget, our office had discussions with the finance department at the city of Miami, talking just in general for budgets for the next fiscal year. You know, one of the things that came out was try to be conservative. You know, you don't know what the future holds. So for right now, what you're going to see before you is a very simple, conservative budget, very similar to last year's. So we're actually asking for less money and funding. But if you just give me a moment, I'll walk you through the first page, which is the overview. And then we have the granular sheets on the back end in the case we want to review those as well or get into a deep dive. It's up to the wishes of the board. So just if you have a moment right now, the budget for FY20, we had budgeted $1,292,495 for fiscal year 20. At the conclusion of this fiscal year, we envision having spent $1,030,000, which would give us a surplus of about $261,000 for this current fiscal year. As you look first towards the line item to walk us through the bid assessments, total income that we've collected for this year is $648,000. Now, please note that we're working with the largest folio holder here in Wynwood because there's about $84,000 that's outstanding there. And we've also had a surplus of other checks that have come in. We've worked with the city of Miami not to impose any liens for this fiscal year in light of what's happening, but just there are still penalties, but there are no liens being placed. So we're trying our best not to make things more complicated for our board members. But when you add that 84, that gives us closer to the goal that we had that previous year. Now for the current year, we're just budgeting 782 flat. To give you an idea, that's about 141 folios that are within the district. As of right now, we are not adjusting the square footage. So what we're getting right now is, it's 24 cents for adjusted floor rate and 12 cents per square foot for upper floor. So that's just a decision that we've made unless the board wants to hire them. We just feel that right now, that's the best move. When you go to deferred collections, FY20, we're expected to collect about $75,000 in past due assessments. That's for the previous years. Right now, we have about $265,000 in assessments dating back from fiscal year 19 all the way to fiscal year 14. 13 is now clear, so everybody has been paid for that year. And usually we see these happening when there's a refinance or a sale, which are happening a lot. So typically that's why we always get to catch the back end money. Now for FY21, based on previous trends, what we've put is $50,000. That's conservative for what we're going to go for versus the previous year in light of the comments made. When you go to restricted parking waivers, we had budgeted $405,000 for this current fiscal year. We are scheduled to receive $564,000. There is a breakdown of the waivers for the spaces that we have collected and will collect prior to the end of the year. Now, when you look at FY21, we currently have about 103 waivers that are scheduled to be purchased. These waivers are at 12,000 each. And in an effort to be again conservative and to follow the net zero, we only put 296,005 with 579 on that budget. So in reality, we're looking at $1 million. But just to be conservative on that end, that's what we've placed. Interest income, this is a new line item that we're going to introduce October 1st. Basically what happens is it ties into the line item under, which is the Public Benefit Trust Fund. So I know that Irving had referenced this a little earlier, and for those folks watching on TV, the Wynwood bid has a program that's called the Public Benefit Trust that allows developers to gain extra floors for a price of $13.66 per square foot. Now, since this program was unleashed, in about 2 years, we've collected over $3 million. Those $3 million, when you look at our budget, it reflects as zero. And the reason why is because it's being held at the City of Miami. The City of Miami, the chairman and myself spoke with the finance director that's in charge of the funding. And they have agreed to allow us to take in the money to Bank of Ozarks and just work off the interest. So right off the bat, we got some preliminary numbers from Bank of Ozarks, and a very conservative money CD gets us 25,000. We have over 3 million, more than 3 million. So that number should be up, but again, we're being conservative because you just never know. So for the interest income, that's why we put 5,000. That was literally because I think we're gaining interest on our parking trust fund account that we also changed, but this is a bigger pot, so this is why we went with 25,000. So at the end of the of the fiscal year 21, or the beginning, however you want to put it, we're budgeting $1,152,000 with $599. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I'd be happy to answer before I go into expenses. Okay, hearing none. Again, feel free to chime in whenever, because I get lost sometimes in this. All right, so when it comes down to expenses, security. So last year we had budgeted $7,250 for security. The lion's share of that would have been our police gala partnership that we always do with the chief of police. In light of that not happening this year, we again don't envision it next year. We literally took out that line item from the budget. There's $2,000 out of that we use for partnerships with City of Miami when it comes to Easter, when it comes to Halloween, when it comes to different initiatives at Roberto Clemente Park. We sponsor in tandem with PD in the city. So the $2,000 that used to be in that line item has now been reallocated towards marketing and advertisement. And you'll see that within that line item, if you look granularly, there's a $2,000 line item, and that's just for the sponsorships to keep it in the home where it should be, which is marketing. So we're not asking for any funding on that end, but the partnerships still continue via the marketing committee. Sanitation clean team wise, we budgeted $188,000 with $899. Now, to give you an idea, we are expecting to finish the year at $177,351, which would give us a surplus. The reasons for the surplus, as you know, members, if they call in sick, we just don't replace that person. That was something that we were doing before. So what we do is we have 6 team members working all during the day. Alec shifted their schedule just because nighttime, the curfews, and the unknowns, we have now all 6 members. So if we lose one, we always have 5. Also, when it comes to the clean team, they're working 236 hours weekly. When you add our 2 cleaners that are still in our GNA FICA, that would give you 8 cleaners for the entire district. So right now, they're The granular of what the supervisor and the assistant supervisor makes are there. We haven't put any raises for the next year, in addition to, you know, the staff here, but that I'll get to that at a moment. So right now we're looking at the same numbers. We also have a line item within there that we increased cleaning supplies, and that came out great because we've been using it to buy gloves, masks, goggles, anything that we could do. We've been using it also for the material for the pressure cleaning. So we would like to keep that line item there. We also are buying mosquito dunks that we're putting inside of all the water barricades at ZAC and KYU, so we won't have a flare-up of mosquitoes, you know, addressing COVID. So that budget, we're requesting it for it to remain the same. Marketing and advertisement, we had budgeted $270,000 for fiscal year 20. We envisioned spending 175. The main reason for that is social media services, that was brought in-house. So we only spent 16,000 out of the 24. In addition, programming, in which we had a large, the programming expenses, we only spent about 15,000 when we budgeted 45. And that's basically COVID threw a monkey wrench on all the, you know, programming that we had scheduled within Wynwood and outside via partnerships. That's why you see that funding source not used to its potential. Marketing materials, we budgeted 15,000 and spent 6786, and then that's almost why we have the 95% under budget on that line item. When it comes to office staffing, right now we have three staff members. I will say it's the best deal in the whole city of Miami when you consider 3 members, 50 blocks. I don't think there's anybody stretching that amount of manpower or shortage of manpower versus the size of the district and how energetic this place is. So we have 221,000. Right now we have scheduled for the next fiscal year 221,000, the same amount. So Chris is scheduled, you know, he is his increase, and Alex's, you know, will take effect this year. Alex's already has, but on my end, you know, I'll stay as is, you know, in light of what's happening out here. So that is what you get. We're scheduled to spend 221,505, which is under that budget. So that's very conservative on that end. Office operations expenses. So basically what we've done here is we approved 199,000, but we're scheduled to spend 220. This is the only line item with an overage, and the overage is attributed to the lease primarily. Right now our lease was scheduled to end in May. We're paying about $5,300, and because of COVID, we were delayed in doing so. So at best, we could probably get out of here August 1st, but we've been carrying those extra months when it comes to office operation expenses. In addition to, as I previously mentioned, we have 2 cleaners that are inside of the office staff budget. So even though they're getting paid through marketing, through their solid waste, we still inherit the FICA and the taxes. So we had submitted an LSR to the city of Miami in 2018. This arrangement was done before me, but we wanted legal help to see how we could get out of it. We still haven't heard back from the city of Miami. I believe it's the labor department, so that's why there's some sort of setup. I know Danny and I and Robin, you know, we've been putting pressure on these labor folks. We'll do so again, because after 2 years, I think we need to shut this one out, you know, one way or another. So office operation wise, we've budgeted 193,000 with $200, and that is already inclusive of the office rent in the case that the board would move forward with it at 42,000 for the year. So again, you know, we're asking for less funding on that end. Capital expenses, we budgeted 405,000. Now, when it comes to the restricted fund, the expenses for the year are going to be 234,000. The reason is we have a $50,000 donation to the city of Miami for the Streetscape Initiative. It's scheduled, once they give us all the final paperwork that we've been requesting, it will be issued prior to the end of the fiscal year. And then we budgeted an additional 25 to 30,000 to this fiscal year for signage. And within your packet, you'll see the first draft of the proposal that we got came up to about 29,000, and we'll make sure to work with them to lower that. But the idea is for us to literally spend that money now to get the paperwork, the planning side of how this is going to work. So then once 10/1 hits, we would be ready to either procure the signage and the installation, or hopefully get the approval that we are approved to piggyback on the downtown DDA. So it doesn't mean that the signs are going to look exactly like the obviously they're going to be more Wynwood style, but so we don't have to recreate the wheel, recreate the permitting for what these poles are, wind resistance, and everything that comes with it. If we use something that has been already approved, they've been at it for 10 years. Just to give you an idea how long it takes, we could put this out in months. So that's why you see an expense for this current year at 35. And then we have the Wynwood donation scheduled to hit this current year. Now for the next current year, we're asking 212,000. That's again for the signage. We would like to move forward with hopefully the final camera initiative, which would be phase 3. To put things in perspective, I did 4 in Coconut Grove, so we haven't caught up yet. And then we have public sidewalk rubber mulching initiative. That's to continue. We're going to focus on, obviously, before the fiscal year ends, North Miami would be done. That's where we're going to address the rubber mulching and any other sides that we have, decay. And then for the next for 21, we want to continue this initiative. And Wynwood wayfinding banners, that's 30,000. We don't know if the signs will be up by December or by March, but this gives us a budget so we could put up signs for events or for initiatives that we're doing in the interim. So, again, we're asking for less income. The one thing that I just would ask the board is if they would consider putting a line item there for the restaurant recovery initiative. I now have 6 emails and 2 calls during this meeting of more Wynwood property owners, restaurant owners that want to participate in this initiative. And if we don't know how long this is going to go, so I would like at least some sort of funding there just to make sure that we could help and give back and keep everybody alive. If there's any questions on expenses, please feel free to chime in.
Okay, so thank you for that overview, Manny. Just before I open it up to the floor for the board, I just want to fill out a few little gaps that were just missing from the overall presentation. So for the next fiscal year, we've actually allocated a sizable increase in the marketing budget. So as Manny pointed out, last year's approved budget for marketing and advertising was a little over $270,000. For this upcoming fiscal year, we've bumped that up to $337,000 because we anticipate certainly there's going to be a lot of need to promote the recovery efforts of our businesses across all of our platforms and to continue that steady growth year over year in putting dollars behind marketing. To put an idea out there regarding the restaurant recovery program, Manny, we certainly have the dollars within marketing, within programming. Certainly, I feel very comfortable allocating those dollars, seeing no concern from any other board members. Certainly, that is a marketing initiative to promote the economic recovery of those restaurants. But overall, before we open it up to comments, I just want to thank you, Manny, and also Frank from CCSG, our accounting firm, for all of your efforts in getting this budget put together. So are there any questions or comments from any of the board members regarding the budget? We see a hand going up from David Charette, so we're just going to ask you again to unmute yourself. David, go ahead.
I'm behind the restaurant idea completely. I think we should assume that there won't be good vaccination plan into 2021. And so we should look at funding it for definitely for the remainder of the year.
Absolutely. Yep. There are funds there for that. Thank you for that, David. Did you have any questions for Manny about any of the other items before we? Nope. Okay. Glenn, go ahead.
Yeah, just on the staffing item, I noticed the line item is the same and it hasn't increased. I would think that I thought we may be doing an increase in pay.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. So all of you should have received from our city attorney an evaluation for Manny's annual review. So if you haven't already, please look for that email and get that information back to him. And then I'll be reviewing that together with him and make a formal recommendation at the next board meeting. But to your particular point, Glenn, based on, direction from the city finance department, this is obviously impacting various departments, not just unique to the Wynwood bid. We're really kind of putting a freeze on salaries right now. We don't know what the future holds. We don't know if there's going to be a further shortfall to our revenue going into the next fiscal year. While we have a surplus now, that's very healthy. That's our insurance for a even rainy or cloudier day, which we sadly will probably have. So we're not putting forth any recommendations for a raise. I've spoken with Manny and the team, and it was their idea actually to ask of me to support that being brought before all of you today. There's certainly other mechanisms like bonus based on performance that we can avail ourselves of. But right now, as the chairman, I would recommend that we harmonize our budget, particularly on salary, as we've been asked to, as the city is doing with their staff across all the various departments. Does that address your concern, Glenn?
I don't entirely agree with it, but okay, I understand.
Yeah, I mean, I have my personal opinions as well, but there's departments that are going to be furloughing. We may have to furlough, by the way.
Around next year, I don't want to get a heart attack.
Yeah, no, listen, I mean, Glenn, in full transparency, during March and April, Manny and I were having very difficult conversations of having to even furlough staff, not the clean team, but the bid office staff. And we're not even in the second wave yet. So I just think it's prudent, as I'm sure all of you are in your private businesses, just to be conservative right now. And at the end of next fiscal year, we can always
that decision, or is that still up for discussion?
It's certainly up for discussion. This board has to approve the budget, but I would caution you, because the budget also has to go before the Miami City Commission for final approval. And they made it very clear that this is what they're expecting from all the various budgets that are going to be presented to them.
Understood.
Any other questions or comments for Manny from the budget? Marlo.
Yeah, going forward, I'm certainly supportive of the marketing. The increase in the marketing budget. My concern is in this, as we hopefully enter into a post-COVID world. It's all going to be about safe and clean. Okay, in my view, I think that it's that's a mantra that for the customers to come back, for us to truly be able to have our brand even fortified more. I'm a bit concerned, and the clean team does an amazing job. So I just want to start off by saying that, but we don't have the support of the city, as Manny said before, in terms of them picking up the pieces and really doing their part of cleaning the touch points and everything else. Do we want to think about other aspects to really make sure that our marketing team has the tools in their toolbox. Are we sanitizing? Are we disinfecting? Is there a line item needed for that now and moving forward in our sanitation budget? So I just want to bring that up in for conversation for the, for Albert, for you to, just to think about and have the rest of the board members think about. Does the marketing team need to know that that's, I would think that that's going to be a very important factor. We have competition from, all different neighborhoods and districts in Miami, but I want to make sure that we do send a message of clean, which we can, proactively work on the safe issues and the hope that we don't lose, patrol officers and things like that. So, that's a little bit of another topic, but I'm really focused on the clean issue.
Manny.
Marlo, if I may, the good news, Marlo, is Alec and I are like hawks when it comes down to the clean team. And what we have budgeted there, I mean, we say this to the clean team every day. We understand, that these are tough times and, that there are no guarantees, moving forward when it comes to work and effort and times and hourly and what you make. But right now, Marlo, they're done at 10:30. And it's about, because you have 8. So what we have them do is literally walk around, and clean whatever they can. But there's fat in that budget, Marlo, in which, if, we needed to do this with 6 people, we could do it with 6 people, because there's just not demand at night that when you came in the morning, there were 6 inches of garbage. So when they come in the mornings now, the battle's 40% done. But what we could do, Marlo, is we could, I guess, come up with some sort of, internally, Alec and I, for, materials that they may need, like disinfectants or sprays or something to that effect. And we could create a sub-budget within this, but I think that there'll still be enough fat in there to do it with the 188. If that's a suffice answer, Marlo.
I'd like to hear the other board, I just want to make sure that what the scope is right now. We hope that scope is going, we hope that more people will likely require us to be even more vigilant about the cleaning, sanitization, and disinfection. So I just want to put it out there and make sure, if you're confident, Manny, that the team can handle it, even as the people return, then
I am
convince me.
confident, Marlo. I am confident.
Okay, I just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, and just to further concur with Manny, speaking with Manny about these numbers, that Marlo, there are dollars there available, and we can always launch a program to help businesses, which we haven't done yet, and we haven't been asked to help individual businesses, mitigate any potential issues as they may arise.
Okay.
And those dollars can come through our marketing initiatives as well. So I think we definitely have enough assets out there. Your point is well taken. Absolutely, this is going to be a focus for many more months. So I know we appreciate those comments for sure. Manny, I know you had another comment.
And Albert, Marlo, we have 177 scheduled to be expended this year, so that gives us 11,000 that we still have to spend for the year. We could use that now, to offset whatever we need to buy or whatever, to ensure that 188 gets us to where we need to next year.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it really. Go ahead.
I'm going to recognize Glenn and then Irving next. Glenn, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, in terms of if we're spending capital on extra initiatives, I think we have to come to an agreement on what those initiatives are going to be. Is it going to be sanitizing sidewalks in their businesses? Is it going to be like thermometers to support the businesses or locations? It's opening up almost like another little realm within the sanitation, speak, quote unquote.
That's why we have an operations committee. And I know that Marlo and Irving and Leslie at the time when she was on the board were a part of that group, along with Alexander and a few others. So that committee will reconvene as necessary to work through those particulars, Glenn. That won't be something that we'll be covering here at the board.
Great. To that note, that there is a local business operator in Wynwood called Outform, I think on 26th Street, that have invented the eye display, which checks temperatures of individuals, and
very pretty.
Is connected to the doors or displays inside shops, notifying the business owners that the person coming in is at the requisite temperature that you decided that is happy for you to allow the customer to come in. Just to throw it out there.
Yeah, share that with Manny so we have that information so we can look into that. That's a great one. Irving, I know you had previously indicated you had a comment or question for Manny.
No, it's not a question. I just think when things start upticking, we just can't have overflowing garbage trash receptacles. That's gonna not air well with cleanliness. I don't know even about having public hand sanitizers. Whatever we do, I think we need to just promote cleanliness and show it. I think right now we have plenty of money and the garbage is all cleaned up, but I think when things start upticking again, even though we had problems, still had before this all occurred, garbage was a problem. So if we have that coming back, it's not going to show well. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Irving. Gabrielle, we didn't hear from you. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I am. Do you have any thoughts on the budget you want to share with the board? We just need you to unmute yourself, Gabrielle, so we can hear you. Oh, Gabrielle, we can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself? Okay, we're having audio problems with Gabrielle. I apologize for that. If we can get Gabrielle's audio figured out, we'll certainly bring it up. So basically the way this works, if you remember from the process last year, we'll have to, approve this budget, and then it will go. Gabrielle, I'm sorry, we can't see your phone, but if you want to log out and log back in, we can see if that helps you with your microphone on your end. In the meantime, we're going to wrap up this package for the budget. I just want to emphasize a couple of things that have already been discussed. And as you all know now, going into your second year here on the board, there's enormous flexibility here for staff to, obviously make adjustments as necessary that are reasonable, that are allowable. There's also dollars from the parking trust fund that have very specific uses earmarked behind them that are also available. And I think big picture, we've led already very responsibly over the last 6 years. We've always worked with a surplus, so we've been very prudent in how we've managed our public dollars. So from our property owners that we collect every year and through our trust fund. So I just want to commend the staff, particularly Manny, on making sure that we stay on budget. And it's something I know he does every day, every week, every month. So with that, I'd like to open it up for a motion from the board to approve the budget. So who would like to make the first motion?
I make a motion.
All right, Irving makes a motion. Is there a second?
Second the motion.
All right, Marlo, second. We're going to ask everybody just to raise your hand and say aye to approve. Aye.
Aye.
Glenn, are you approving the budget?
Aye.
Yep, okay. Very good. Seeing that there was nobody in opposition, the budget has been approved. This is going to go over now to the Miami Commission, and they'll be reviewing this along with all the other budgets from the various departments and other bids in the city when they reconvene in September. The last item before we open it up to new business is the office lease. So we've allocated the dollars moving forward, but certainly there's a present need to shift. So the proposal that was contained in your packet, although you gave us the discretion to pursue this, I just want to formalize it. So I need a first and a second motion to approve Manny's continuance on getting the terms finalized, working with city legal to execute a contract so the bid office can relocate next month. Is there a motion?
First.
All right, thank you, Glenn. Is there a second? Irving. All right. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Aye. And opposed? No one's opposed. All right, so we will be moving to the Wynwood Arcade, pending any unforeseen circumstances in the coming weeks. All right, so that concludes our finance segment. Moving on to new business. Does any board member have any items for new business? Seeing none. Manny, is there any? Oh, actually, David rose his hand. So, David, we're just going to ask you to unmute yourself there, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. This may not be new. I'm not sure. We made a decision on the bid members and approving the bid members? I know because of COVID that has been delayed, as well as the fact that it got punted a few times, but the group is still meeting. It's still very vital part. And those names were submitted, and we had more names submitted than we needed. And so the question that because we just met this week, the question came up, what's going on with the approval?
Okay, so just to clarify, you're discussing the Wynwood Design Review Committee. You mentioned the bid, so I want to make sure that we clarify that.
It's really close, very similar name.
Yes,
so
yes.
That's exactly what I'm referring to.
Plenty of Wynwoods in every committee name here. So yes, the WDRC. So yes, we did solicit nominations. There are obviously slots, including yours, David, that are up for reappointment. Because they are appointments from the board, they continue to serve at the pleasure of this board until such time as reappointed. So we haven't taken it up for a variety of reasons, including obviously COVID and the fact that we did not reconvene during those months. So we could absolutely take this up at the next board meeting agenda if the board would like, and we can send around through a packet in advance of that meeting the various bios of all the members that are currently serving that want to return, and new members that want to be considered for appointment. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Sure.
Is there anything else, David, on that you wanted to add?
Only that the last meeting lasted, I think, like 3 hours. I'm not totally sure. In fact, it did, and we had to cut it short because it could have easily continued. And I just want to tell this group, the board, how vital it is that the conversations that happen, because it's so much being proposed for the Wynwood area, and a tremendous amount of square footage, pedestrian experience, and then how it integrates in with the overall plan for master plan for landscaping. So it's a very exciting and vital part of the future of Wynwood, and so I think it's a really critical element that we should look at for that group.
Absolutely.
I'm not suggesting, by the way, that anyone wants to leave. I just know that was one of the questions that came up.
Yep, absolutely. And they just reconvened for the first time since March.
Correct.
I think we're now in a position to do that, and they're also meeting virtually. Duly noted, sir. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other ideas, comments, questions for new business? Irving?
It's not new business, it's old business, but is there an update on the streetscape plan and the One Earth plan that last month was supposed to be forthcoming?
Yes, not on our agenda today for a reason, because there hasn't been an update provided by the planning department. I did have a meeting last week, a virtual meeting that is with the director and deputy director of the planning department, just to emphasize our excitement and commitment to getting this wrapped up. There are a few pending items that still are being worked through, so we can finalize a final set of amendments to present to the Capital Committee before bringing back to the board. for final approval. And the planning department director has committed to really expediting this. So I'm hopeful that we will have a specific meeting scheduled just for the streetscape and the NRD amendments. There's been a lot of conversations, a lot of phone calls and emails from other property owners as well that want an update on this. So we're trying to work as best we can with all of the obstacles now with COVID. So expect to hear from Manny on that. And as soon as we receive any materials that are ready for distribution and comments, we'll circulate them in advance of the meeting. Any other questions, comments, items for new or old business before we adjourn? Okay, so before we adjourn, just want to thank everybody for their time, and those of you watching. The Wynwood Business Improvement District continues its operations, as you've heard today. To learn more information about our various initiatives, the work, the people behind the scenes that are committed to the betterment of our community, we encourage you to visit us online at wynwoodmiami.com and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter by our handle at wynwoodmiami. On behalf of the board of directors, I'd like to thank everybody at the city and at the county as well for all of their help behind the scenes and for their leadership in helping us navigate these unprecedented times. With that said, I'd like to open up the floor again for one last motion to adjourn. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
All right, Morrill is recognized. Second is Irving. All those in favor to adjourn, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
All right, we have adjourned. Gentlemen, we'll see you in the next couple of weeks. Stay safe.
Thank you.